The type of attention you get and who you get it from determines where we end up in life.
We always got.
Jesus has already been accepted to the University of Texas in Austin, electrical
In a
engineering.
community where the statistics aren't the best, the default isn't the best either.
The gentleman who's going to be on the field representing South San,
Defensive captain of the varsity football team.
Mr.
Giving
Rendon.
his life to giving back to this community.
St. Joseph's Catholic Church Choir.
So I decided to start a nonprofit called Building a Purpose
And if we can raise that default to be something of higher standards,
to help students find their purpose in life.
I think we can do something
We all we need.
special by
Our
default.
guest today here is Mr. Joseph Coppola, and he is the department chair for many departments. It seems like I feel like you every time I meet you, you've got a new department, from the cybersecurity school, the business school, helping start up the business bachelor's program, the communications department, and I know you'll correct me if I've thrown you a little bit more, but I've seen you in after school committees where you've gotten business professionals to come in, look for jobs and internships for some of the students at Palo Alto. Mm-hmm. I've seen you at poll sites where they're polling sites the day of election, going out doing your civic duty with the family. Baylor fan, well, it's all right, we'll forgive you.
Yeah.
I don't think I got any Longhorn stuff here, so maybe
We're not having the best season, so it's okay.
You're a true fan, though, I will say. And you named your daughter Baylor, didn't
Yes.
you? Okay, we'll get to that.
It is
too.
hard
It's
being a Baylor University fan, and you either went there or you didn't, or you know someone that's very close there. And totally, very difficult to be a Baylor fan, but we've had a couple of decent winning seasons.
RG3, man, those guys.
Yeah,
that was a great.
That was
year.
a great, amazing year.
Smokes. Yeah, well, so introduce yourself, Joseph, and some of the things I missed.
I do consider myself an educator and an advocate for student success, and I've worked at Palo Alto College for the last 10 plus years full time, and then as a part time instructor since 2004, and serving as a department chair and also an associate professor of speech communication. And beyond that, I just grew up in the west side of San Antonio, grew up attending most schools in the Edgewood Independent School District, Las Palmas Elementary, graduated from Memorial High School, and then after graduating from Baylor University, was married to my high school sweetheart, Theresa, and we have 2 kids, and I'm just grateful to have 2 beautiful, healthy daughters. That's the most important thing, just healthy daughters that I just adore, and I just want to see the very best for them. And they are just 2 amazing little girls. And that's about it.
Well, thanks for sharing that. What is your first recollection of the time we met?
So, first recollection is when you participated in the TEDx Palo Alto event, and I recall seeing you as we were practicing for this event, and then the event itself. And then because we had had casual conversation during that time, I recall seeing you later at Palo Alto College when you were hosting, I believe it was the Building a Purpose event, where you were seeking mentors, and I started reconnecting with you about that. And then you gave me your phone number around that time, and then I just remember later on we met up for something. I can't recall what it was, but we met up for something, and then I had mentioned to you, hey, there's opportunities at the college, full time if you were to consider that. And then after that, I had mentioned to you that there was, teaching opportunities as a part timer if you were interested in that. And then, that was the first time I recall.
And the TEDx event that we also had, I remember. I don't know if what your inclinations were going into that event, but for me, I remember, so it was the first year that they had ever done something like that, and I was honored to be a part of it myself. And then when I found out Ray Saldana was gonna do it too, he called me. He's like, "Hey man, I noticed both of us are gonna be on." We're like, "Oh, 2 South San guys is super cool," and he's always been a friend and mentor as well, and he I was like, what are you going to talk about? And he's got this great, I feel like he'd been telling that story for 20 years, just about what his talk was, and the gaps and strategy for in politics where folks are like, you go to the people who vote.
Yes.
And nobody goes to the people who don't, because time is money and you've got to put your efforts into what you can count. But yeah, he knocked on all the doors, and he did what most people wouldn't. And yeah, I'm sure at some scale you just can't knock on everybody's door in the United States. But I've always had great respect, and I've always seen Ray in such a great light. When I found out you were his coach, I was like, okay, he must be power hitting with equally complementing mentorship coaches. So I mean, the fact that you were coaching somebody who's very well spoken and in a platform that's very well known, I had a lot of instant high regard to your participation to that event, and how you would help forge his craft too. So
thank you. And I love how you and I, even though we have very busy lives, you make it a point to reconnect, whether it be let's eat here, let's talk this, or updates. So I really do appreciate that, because that's something that it's a skill that not a lot of people have that self-awareness of. Like just a lot of folks, think about it, from elementary school to middle school to high school, kind of lose contact with one another, or people that used to work with one another that could possibly be a part of their professional professional network asset map of knowing who to connect with, who to go with. I just really admire that from you, that ability to just maintain these connections. So that's just wonderful, and thank you very much for always doing that.
Yeah. Let's talk about the bachelor's program.
Oh yeah.
Is this the first bachelor's program Palo Alto has ever offered?
Yes. So you probably remember a former state representative, Leo Pacheco, who, when he was in Austin, had written legislation to allow community colleges to offer a bachelor's degree. And so that allowed each of the Alamo colleges to offer one bachelor's degree. And so we are now at Palo Alto College offering a bachelor's of operations management, a bachelor's of applied technology and operations management. And it's a business-centered, thinking about, if I think about what are just about any organization that we're looking for in San Antonio to run, not necessarily to be the owner, CEO, although you can certainly do that. We want them to be able to graduate knowing how to lead others, how to supervise others, how to communicate with others, how to have this type of kind of servant leadership approach where they engage and help employees do what they have to do, that they have to understand budget, that they have to understand what does one look for when managing resources, whether it be budgets, whether it be people. We want them to understand some basic data science skills. There's a lot that goes into this operations management, but at the end of the day, we're wanting individuals to be successful working in organizations, whether it be nonprofit, private sector, and we're really excited about this because we launched it in March with our first cohort of students, and now we have about 370 plus declared majors, which is a huge number, and we're really excited for our students to give them opportunity because, as you know, in San Antonio, I have a lot of family with some college, no degree. And it's unfortunate that these are folks that some of them may have taken out student loans. Some of these folks took these classes over 10 years ago, and I'm grateful that Palo Alto is so focused on accessibility for our students that we are able to allow students, in some cases that took classes well over 10 years ago, to transfer those credits in as open electives, and they can transfer in up to the 30 open electives for our 120-hour bachelor's degree. So we're just excited to be able to change lives and help folks get that initial bachelor's degree. We're excited.
So you're saying that students who took 1 or 2 or 3 classes, but then life happened, had to go work for 10 years, and they come back and they can use those hours that they had once taken as an elective towards the bachelor's program degree that they're offering.
Yes, they can submit those hours for our review to get credit as open electives. So it's just a game changer in terms of accessibility for students. And on top of that, the students who, you think about we have a lot of folks that are at the Alamo colleges that are getting an Associate of Applied Science in cosmetology, in advanced manufacturing, in video games, and we can take up to 30 of those hours from those technical courses, whether it be cosmetology, advanced manufacturing, welding. We are speaking to our welding students. If they want to get a bachelor's, transfer in up to 30 hours. Cosmetology, same thing, because we want them to know that bachelor's, it's not this dream.
Right.
It's a possibility at Palo Alto College.
That's awesome. My next question would be, you said 10 years. Is 20 years too long?
Well, really, they're going to submit, regardless of timeline, they're going to the students who may have submitted, that may have taken classes over 10 years ago, they're going to submit using a form that we just were able to complete. They'll submit that via their advisor. They'll then have the program lead, Dr. Joshua Garcia, review this in consultation with our dean. They'll examine what can be approved for the open electives. So quite possibly many opportunities may be available for transfer for these open electives.
Wow.
So we're asking students, just submit the form, enroll, submit the form, and then we'll take a look at it because we really want to promote accessibility.
Yeah, that's amazing. First thing that comes to mind is my mom. I remember her taking classes at Palo Alto. My mom used to work night shift at QVC at a call center, and then she'd go watch us play football during the day, and then she'd go to school just before she had to go to work at 9, take the evening classes, and she never finished, but I've actually had some hope too, because I've had a couple students who in our customer relations and principles of marketing class who are 70 years old, 65, and it's awesome. That's amazing that they're Palo Alto's really taking this initiative to pick up the students who feel like they almost like a waste, you know, like I didn't finish, I didn't get credit, and now it's like, no, you have an opportunity to put that towards a bachelor's degree.
Yeah. And that's what it's all about, because looking at our community, so I mentioned to you that I grew up around the Edgewood School District, and that was an area, and San Antonio has a lot of pockets of poverty. There's a huge, so not just through my doctoral work, but through working at the college, we explore that in San Antonio, we have one of the highest economic segregation rates among major municipal areas, and something must be done.
Right.
There's the educational levels differ from certain zip codes to the other. Health indicators differ. When you look at the total hospital beds from certain sides of town versus others, great disparities. You're starting to see more of an emphasis in the south side. And so, for example, you're seeing the building of the Palo Alto Hospital right by A&M San Antonio. Palo Alto just launched a new nursing program and a new dental hygiene program. So we're trying to build that human capital for the south side of San Antonio to provide this support. And our dental hygiene program even offers free or reduced services to the community based on certain eligibility. And
they
so,
make good money too.
Oh, the dental hygienist. It's a very lucrative profession. So there are these high wage, high demand fields that hopefully little by little we can persuade students to consider. Because I remember when I was at Memorial at the time, a lot of folks flat out said it's you either go to the university or you go in the trades or you go to the military.
Yeah.
And that was it. But no, there's so many different opportunities. And honestly, when I was at Memorial, I wasn't really encouraged to consider the community colleges. And not a lot of people were. It was you go to university. Now, granted, this was 1997, way back then. It was you go to university, you go to the trades, consider it technical, and so we had like an auto body program at our school, or you go to the military. We have a lot of folks who go to the military, but what's even more amazing is those folks that went to the military, if we can persuade them that after finishing your service, 10, 20 years down the road, you can get your degree and you can do it at a community college and maximize your VA benefits. And there's so many things that you can do where you can take out loans for businesses. You can take out, get that entrepreneurship degree. So we have an entrepreneurship associate of applied science at Palo Alto College that we try to show individuals, how do you go about starting your business? How do you get the financing for your business? And so there's just so many opportunities. And what I hope that folks in our community can understand is with these economic segregation happening in our city, it's incumbent upon us who know these things to share with our young folks. There's opportunities everywhere, and you can start out doing an advanced manufacturing technology degree at Palo Alto College at 18 years old. You can, work at Toyota while you're getting that degree, making $18 an hour. At the time you're done with that 2-year degree in AMT, you can work at Toyota making about $55K. You can go into cosmetology. We have, compared to the proprietary cosmetology schools that are out there that are charging $25K or more, you can get your cosmetology degree very reasonably, probably about $15K or less, whatever the tuition and fees are, and start your own cosmetology shop, your own salon, get your bachelor's degree. So there's just a lot of opportunities. And I just hope the folks in our community are considering some of these. And I know that as someone who grew up poor, usually individuals that are poor, it's hard to see beyond a certain.
You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. You don't know what you don't know. And you want that immediate, growing up poor, you generally want that immediate satisfaction. You want, what is going to make me happy in the moment? And so it's hard to think about, am I willing to sacrifice my time, my personal enjoyment? Am I willing to sacrifice my relationships for the long term? But if we can suspend that sacrifice, if we can just sacrifice for a moment and pursue an education for 2 years, so many amazing opportunities are available to our youth. But that sacrifice is one that, how do you teach a child, especially, if you're a single parent and you're so busy working as a single parent and you don't have time to have these conversations, or we have a lot of folks in the foster care system. And so these opportunities for mentorship, educating students, and, we talked a little bit earlier where we talked about God places these opportunities before us, and at a minimum, can we share this information, these opportunities with students, with our young, so that they're aware, and maybe even have the conversation that it's 2 years, push through the pain, push through the sacrifice. In 2 years, amazing things can happen to you that can change the course of your fate, but also their family's fate for the better.
Right, man. It's amazing at Palo Alto, and it's amazing that I'm even a part of this under your leadership. I mean,
I'm grateful for you being a part of it.
In the meetings we've sat through and building the curriculum, that's been a journey that I've felt very privileged to do. But what you're sharing now, that's the real world stuff. We're in the kitchen cooking, right? Curriculum and finding real life people who are working and being able to do this. Me at an adjunct role, and Dr. Garcia and some of the other folks at a full-time role. But I can easily see, and I know I have a student in mind right now who's a building a purpose student. Try to apply, and he's like, well, all the mentors on there are college people. I want to be a welder.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but
I have a welder.
We can send him to Palo Alto. He get his welding degree, or get his welding associates, and 30 hours worth of that. Go start a welding business, do his business, and pursue his bachelor's later.
Correct.
Just to put the cherry on top that he's finished with the bachelor's degree.
Absolutely.
I mean, geez, that's amazing.
And the amazing thing is, we have a welding instructor at Palo Alto College, Yves Vanfel, who phenomenal. I mean, probably one of the most amazing instructors I've seen. And his philosophy is, and we've actually had students hired for jobs after just a semester. Imagine for a moment, being paid a living wage job after just a semester. Because in welding, there are certain industries which are so in high demand, and welding is one of them, where we cannot find enough welders in our community. There's so many companies moving to San Antonio that are looking for welders, and they're saying, do you have these folks ready? And we're going to get there. We're going to have them ready. But because of the high demand, folks in the welding industry, they're plucking students off the line. And so what an amazing career to consider. And so I have those nieces and nephews too. I'll tell them, consider a career in welding. If you don't want to go to school for an entire 2 years, but you want to get a job in about a semester, or but you have to be good. If you're good, you can get a job in a semester. If you need more practice, like if you're not welding, if you're out of alignment, then you need a little bit more time. But we have an amazing instructor that works with the students, stands right near them to make sure and kind of guides them. The technology nowadays with all the different types of lab tools that are available to help folks weld and be more accurate. Yes, it's incredible. We visited a college in Houston that has the most amazing makerspace, and I'm hoping we'll be able to bring something like that to Palo Alto College, where they had a makerspace with welding tools, woodworking. They had sewing. They had this sublimator, which allows you to basically make designs on T-shirts, or if you want to go into business creating a puzzle, like get a picture and put it on a puzzle and then sell those puzzles all across the nation, you can do that. Like, photo family puzzles. I mean, just amazing makerspace. So it's providing those opportunities to our students. But if you have a student interested in welding or advanced manufacturing, please tell them about our program. I'd love to give them a tour, and I'd love to show them to the faculty. And it's just some amazing opportunities and amazing mentors working in those careers right now.
So let me go back to my scenario. I have the student, right, goes back, can go to this welding program, but even before that, they're about to graduate from Palo Alto. Can you use Alamo Promise towards welding?
Yes.
Without even paying,
correct,
they can go and do this. Wow.
If a student graduates from one of the Bexar County high schools, whether it be for a charter school, private school, they are eligible for the Alamo Promise, and they can use that for their first, as long as they meet the eligibility requirements. They can enroll in a welding program, a cosmetology program. They can enroll in any Associate of Applied Science, Associate of Arts, Associate of Science, or Associate of Arts in Teaching. Any of the programs are eligible for that. If they wanted to do one of our other, let's say they don't finish the welding degree, but they complete, because we offer level 1, level 2 certifications, they can finish those opportunities. And there's often industry certifications tied to some of these programs. So, for example, for our network cloud computing program, our students will start out, they'll take like a IT Essentials class, which prepares them for a CompTIA A+. So our students are, and by the way, at Palo Alto College, we cover the cost of those industry certifications.
Awesome.
Like it might be $380. We'll cover that because of the grants that we have. So long as we have these grants, we're covering those. So imagine a student getting that CompTIA A+, and then they take like an introduction to networking class. They'll take like a Linux class. The students have an opportunity to then apply for our partnership with Microsoft for an internship. So we've had some students do Microsoft internships after just 2 semesters. One student didn't even graduate and was able to land a job with Microsoft, making one of their data centers, making a great entry-level salary. So there's just so many opportunities out there. And Alamo Promise, if they're graduating 18 years of age, enrolling in that program, great opportunity for them. We just recently forged a partnership with Harlandale, where some of the folks from Harlandale are taking some of our IT classes, and they're going to have the opportunity to earn the CompTIA A+. And by the time they graduate, they will have taken the courses that are part of our Microsoft Data Center Academy. So if they want to apply for the internship, they may be available for that. So there's just a lot of different opportunities for students to consider.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. And I remember a few of the interns we took on from Palo Alto at CNF. And actually, I was just talking to one yesterday. Just full-time, got a job there.
What an opportunity, right?
What a great opportunity. And I wish more people would know about it.
Yeah. But again, the students, while the faculty can inform, the students need to take advantage of these opportunities. And if it's a student I think you're referring to, she took advantage of the opportunity, and exceptional, and was willing to listen. Not everyone's willing to listen.
Right.
You have to be, as a mentee, you have to be willing to listen, and you have to be willing to take action and be accountable for, your mentor said, do this. Did you do those things? And did you apply? Because, much like buying a lottery ticket, you can't win if you don't buy a ticket. If you can't get into a school if you don't apply, you can't get into a job if you don't apply.
Right.
You can't get a higher raise if you don't ask for one. You don't, whatever, there's room to negotiate. There's room to all these, and it's a soft skill when we think about it. Communication, negotiation, having these conversations with folks, getting in the door. It's so important to encourage our young folks to engage in professional networking. How do you network? Who are what companies are you interested in? What industry? Who are those in that industry that you should know? Are there industry events that you should attend? And what can you do to be a part of that and develop yourself for that future career?
Right. No, powerful. Man, it's awesome that it's in our backyard. It's awesome that it took Texas A&M San Antonio a little while to get down here. Yeah, UTSA was growing out there, but now we've got these partnerships, and I think Palo Alto, when Palo Alto came on, the 85, is that
roughly
came onto the map. It's that whole area, and the South Side is very lucky that we've got these partnerships and are able to connect with these students. I was just talking to one of our board members for Building a Purpose. He's the vice provost of enrollment at UT in Austin, and sharing him about the work we're doing and Palo Alto offering this bachelor's program. And he goes, one of the things he said, and that I hadn't, and you touched on a bit here too, was what about the students that just do those 2 years and drop off, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a lot easier for you to just, and the overhead costs for readmitting to a 4-year university. You have to do the financial aid, send all that over there, that get accepted. Where at Palo Alto, it's just register for the next semester, and the students you lose there, right? That's one gap. And then the students that don't even get their associates, you really are creating a pipeline and an environment where you catch the students who slip through the cracks and are helping them walk that road as long as they want it. So that's awesome. And one more thing I'll say on your dissertation, I'll say that because I asked that under our purpose segment. What's your purpose in life? But a lot of that hit home here. So, anything else you wanted to share about the program and in general? There's a new building that went up.
Yes, the Rio Grande Hall.
The Rio Grande Hall.
Yeah, Rio Grande Hall has just about all of our student services that we offer, and it's such a great it's a great recruiting tool when we bring new students to consider enrolling at Palo Alto, but it's also a great place to take our industry partners, because every time we have an industry partner for internships, job placement, we'll bring them into the building, we'll show them, gorgeous building, bring them in. This is where students enroll, so they just need to go here. If they don't want to enroll online, which all students can enroll online for different programmatic offerings, or they can come in. There's someone that will walk them through the steps to enroll, and right next to that enrollment office is our advising. So right after they're done with the enrollment, they can be advised. They can, and they will have a dedicated advisor. One of the great things about colleges nowadays, community colleges, and I'm not so sure if universities have transitioned to this, but when I was at Baylor University, I was assigned by a dean, and there was a line out the building. And so I had to wait for this dean of arts and sciences to sign a document that said, yes, it's okay, you take these classes. And sometimes I gave up and would come back, but it was a line that was maybe 300-400 deep. I mean, ridiculously long line. And no one helped me at Baylor University. I mean, yes, I mean, we talked to folks. I had mentors there, but no, in terms of classes, which classes should I take this semester? I didn't have that individual staff advisor, that guidance at Baylor. But at Palo Alto, everyone has an assigned dedicated advisor at the time that you enroll. And our ratios for advising are typically just some of the lowest rates where you have this individualized advising, where we encourage our students to meet with your advisor once a semester. And you set up a meeting, you can meet with them 30 minutes, an hour, one-on-one. What other place gives you that opportunity to make sure, are you progressing? Are these the courses you're supposed to be taking? How are you doing? How's everything working? They can also refer you to these different services. So in that new Rio Grande Hall building, students meet with that advisor. Right after that, they can go to financial aid, what financial aid is available, because Alamo Promise covers it's like a last dollar scholarship tuition and fees. But for students who are not Alamo Promise, what financial aid do we have available for them? And often, if students are interested in IT, for example, or the medical fields, there's usually a boatload of scholarships. Like in IT, I've had, in some cases, years where there's so many scholarships available, but I don't have enough students applying for them. And I'm trying to get my students, hey, you need to apply 1 year, and it's getting much better. More students are applying for the scholarships. But after meeting with financial aid, they can then go to career services, and usually they'll come back, after their first semester. But career services does amazing things with helping with resumes, cover letters, mock interviews, soft skill development, how to apply for jobs. And then we have our share center located in our new building, which basically give, we have all sorts of things where students can apply for emergency aid if they need to pay a light bill. There's a counseling services. There's a free clothes closet if they need food. We have like a food pantry if they need food for the day, or just a brown bag lunch, they can get that. So there's just so many amazing resources. So in that building, there's the student services, and then in our career technical education wing, there's a welding lab. Beautiful, state-of-the-art welding lab, air-conditioned. So I always tell folks, before you decide on a welding lab, is it air-conditioned? Because if it's not, we're in Texas.
That's right.
And so a lot of our students, when they see that we have a welding lab that's air-conditioned, wow, incredible. We also have an advanced manufacturing labs. We have on the top floor a bunch of chemistry labs, a courtroom, all sorts of classrooms, labs. So it's just a beautiful facility to consider, and hopefully with time we'll have some additional newer facilities to support our students.
Yeah, well, they're doing great. I think I feel like there's a new building going up every time I go by there.
Right,
it's wild, and that's awesome that it's here on the south side.
So next time you want to come see the welding lab, please take me up on that offer.
Yes, for sure, I will. How's life? Anything new? Anything interesting besides finally being free from this busy, hectic semester, finals, grades being due, and now we're about to roll into our holidays?
No, all finals have been submitted, so life is great for myself and our faculty and staff at the college, because this is an opportunity for us over these week and a half, in some cases for some of us to take a week and a half off, to in some cases for our faculty to take about 3.5 weeks off, just to re-energize, rejuvenate. And it's an opportunity for us, just the gift of time, to have that time around this time for our family, to spend time with our family, my two girls. And so, new things. I've noticed, I'm just so impressed with my youngest daughter right now, my 7-year-old Baylor, who I remember telling her, we have to develop good habits. And so I'm talking to her about habits, and I'm reading this book about change. It's a really interesting book, and we're talking about specific changes we can make. What are some specific actions, behaviors that we can change to make it a habit for good, whether it be health? And so my youngest, as soon as she gets up in the morning, first thing, she's on the treadmill, which I'm amazed about. Imagine this 7-year-old. 7 years old on the treadmill. And she, before school, so she's ready to go, dressed up, aiming for half a mile before we go to school. And we have a pretty decent commute. It's about about 30 minutes or so commute every morning. So she gets up and does that. And as soon as we get home, she aims for that 1 mile. So she's now averaging about 1.5 miles. Now she's not running, it's a quick walk or with an incline. And I'm trying to get my 11-year-old to do the same. And, my 11-year-old's doing about a mile, sometimes 1.5. But I'm just amazed that my kid's just starting to develop these positive habits. And for me, trying to do the same thing as far as more exercise and just healthy, kind of thinking about, hey, I would like to see them as long as I can. And I like to see how they develop and grow, into women, and I'd like to, stay at my job as long as I can. So just thinking about those healthy habits, and the only other new thing would be just working on my dissertation, which was able to defend my first 3 chapters, which what that means is now I can submit a institutional research review board request so I can begin data collection. So that would be kind of something, down the road in the summer I'd like to update on. Now I've had the chance to do this data collection and interview several individuals about their experiences teaching and whatnot. So that's life is great, though. Life is wonderful.
Wow, yeah, that was my next question: is what interesting is going on in your life? But being able to have your kids get up that early, and what did you put in their drink?
Oh,
Jeez,
I wish I could.
Type of discipline. And
my youngest wakes up even on Saturdays and Sundays about 7 a.m. and I'm amazed that she'll get up early. And for me, I'll get up around 6:30, even on the weekends, because we're up by 5:45 in the morning, Monday through Friday. And so I wake them up about 5:45, 6 o'clock. And my oldest, she can sleep in till 11. Like today, she slept until 10:30. I mean, just didn't want to wake up. But I just find it amazing that others have that self-discipline. And you read about these individuals who are incredibly successful that have that self-discipline. And I'm still trying to get them to make their bed, because I hear making your bed is probably one of the most important self-discipline things you can start out your day with. While they're not making their bed, they're doing other habits, and they do help, clean and do all various chores. My youngest, surprisingly, cleans our toilets once a week. So, I'm grateful for the little things that they're doing, trying to encourage them, developing these habits, because, a lot of kids, especially my oldest right now, and maybe I took too long to work with her to develop these habits. She gets a little frustrated, my oldest, with me. Just, Dad, why are you always making me do this? Or Dad, why do I have to do this? But I tell her, would you rather me not ask you to do stuff? Like, I try to, I hate the comparison sometimes, but I try to, talk to her about, other kids don't have that adult in their life to guide them. And think about it. You're learning skills that at some point you'll need to be able to do. You're not going to have your own maid. You're going to need to pick up after yourself. You're going to need to know how to wash dishes. You're going to need to know how to cook. So all of these things that you're learning now, these are skills that are going to help you. Every book you read right now, it's an investment in yourself. So trying to guide them through it. So for me, those are some of the kind of new things were just eye-opening for me. And I'm just grateful to have these long commutes with my daughters, because in talking to other parents where they say, hey, I take my kid 5 minutes down the road to school, they don't have those kind of deep, long conversations that I have an opportunity to have with my kids every day. And I'm just grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's beautiful. We when Autumn used to go to Mustard State Academy, it was a longer commute than going to right here down the street. But we talked about, we drove by that old Blue Star and the old abandoned buildings that they got there. So I taught her what a dam was. We drove by that little dam every day. We drove by the abandoned building, and there's something special about those little times. The long drives to the ranch, the long drives to work. That's awesome. So you said you're from, I remember you said you were from Memorial High School. Where did you grow up? What was it like growing up?
Sure. So
did you go to Brentwood?
No, I started at Las Palmas Elementary. 7th and 8th grade, did not have ideal grades. Ended up going to Holy Cross 7th and 8th grade. Told my mom, hey, can I try it out? Tried it out. Worst grades. Ended up going to Memorial 9th grade year, and started out there. But I grew up ever since then. I can remember. So I was born at the Brady Green Hospital, which is part of the University Health System downtown, and then all throughout lived kind of in the inner west side. So there's some apartments that I remember growing up that are probably now the soap apartments, the ones that they're going to demolish downtown. I remember kind of growing up in an apartment near there in that area, and then we struggled. My mother was a cafeteria worker at the hospital, and so a single mother, raised 3 kids. So I remember one time we lived behind a daycare. So one of the daycares that we grew up in, they had a little 1-bedroom, and we basically had to share the restroom with the daycare. And so we weren't in there, during the day she was working, but she would drop us off at the daycare. And I remember it didn't have a backlight, so we had to use a flashlight to get in through the back garage because we didn't go in through the front daycare. But we had cable TV. I don't know why we had cable, but we did. And I remember growing up, I don't know if you remember, right behind Our Lady of the Lake University, they had these, they were called the Mirasolas, the Mirasol homes. And now they have a housing project there, basically, homes, renovated homes there. But I remember growing up there and just incredible. Just you're packed with a bunch of people. I remember, seeing beautiful murals. Like one of the things that I still am just fascinated about, especially in San Antonio, is murals, because we grew up in the Mirasolas where there was just some gorgeous murals. And at one point after my mom graduated from her nursing school, we were able to afford to get our first rental house right by Las Palmas Elementary, so about not even a full block away from Las Palmas. And I remember I had my first cassette player there, excited. I think I was maybe about in 3rd or 4th grade, and my first tape was Bobby Brown. I don't know if you remember Bobby Brown, but I was loving Bobby Brown's My Prerogative. And I remember we went to back then they had the Centenos, and remember we went to the Centenos and came back, and somebody broke into our house and took my cassette player. I was so bummed out, and I didn't get another one for a while. So because back then those were expensive.
Yeah, it was a Walkman,
so I didn't.
man.
Yeah, I didn't have one for a while, and then finally she was able to afford her first home, and so we lived right off of West Travis. Right where kind of like Our Lady of the Lake University is. There used to be a Handy Andy on Commerce 24th Street, and there was a Pizza Hut right around there, and 2 blocks behind there. Grew up there for the most part before I ended up going off to college. So lived in the West Side for most of my life, and my family, my uncle and grandfather lived around there as well.
So you said you met your wife, high school sweetheart, in high school?
Yes. In high school in the 9th grade. Yeah.
And so when you went to college, your choice was like 100% Baylor, or how did that work?
Well, so if I must say, so it was between St. Mary's University, where I received a partial scholarship. I was very active in high school, especially my 11th and 12th grade years. I was very active in high school speech and debate. And in 12th grade, I was pretty decent in debate, but growing up, attending Memorial, we didn't have a whole lot of resources.
Right.
So we were able to, from Memorial High School, able to compete against teams from Churchill, MacArthur, and very successful against a lot of these schools. And I thought, imagine what I could do if I had a little bit more resources and, a really good education. So I was thinking about St. Mary's, but St. Mary's had just did away with their debate program at the time. And I was looking at Baylor University. I was also looking at UT Austin. Unfortunately, my grade's my 9th and 10th grade year. I'll tell you, I always tell my students that when I was in 9th grade, I wasn't always the best student. In fact, there was a time period that I had skipped school and, just did what, other people at Memorial may have done around that time.
Yeah.
And so over a 6 weeks period, I missed so many assignments that for my earth science class, I received a 6-week grade of an 8. Not an 80. And so I tell my students this, I had an 8, and, imagine the shame in seeing this, but, my priority was not school. And so my 9th and 10th grade years, my grades were atrocious. I turned it around after meeting my girlfriend, who's now my wife at the time. And then 11th and 12th grade came about, was able to try to turn it around, but my grades were still not good to earn, to get accepted to UT Austin. So I was accepted on a probationary basis, which I didn't want to go accepted on a probationary basis. So I ended up going to Baylor, where I was accepted, but a lot of student loans. Baylor, private university, very expensive. So I ended up going over there. My wife was older than me, so she went to University of Wisconsin-Madison before me, but had dropped out after her second year, and then came back, was working at Walmart, and that's when I said, I'm going to go to Baylor, and she was like, well, do you still want to stick it out? Yes, let's try the long distance thing, and ended up going to Baylor, and about 2 years after that, she moved up there with me.
Wow. So when you graduated from Baylor, you stayed in Waco, or did you come back?
I stayed in Waco to finish graduate school.
Okay, then
so
straight after bachelor's, you went to graduate school.
Yeah, right afterwards. So, being involved with the Baylor University debate team gave me the opportunity where I was there.
Oh, wow. You were on the debate team at Baylor?
I was on the debate team at Baylor. So I ended up competing for them. Was able to participate in the what's called the National Debate Tournament, which is probably one of the most competitive collegiate debate events in the world, the National Debate Tournament, the NDT. And I was able to have the honor to be the president of the Baylor debate team my junior and senior years. And then after that, my coach at the time was asking, what are you going to do? I wasn't so sure. Well, would you like to stay on and get your master's degree in communication studies? And it was such a great decision for me. And so I decided to do that and stayed on, was the graduate assistant debate coach, where it covered my tuition. And so I would encourage any student, if you have an opportunity to go to university and get your master's, and while being in your master's, have the opportunity to have your tuition covered through a graduate assistantship, to please consider that, because schools, master's degree, doctoral programs are so expensive. If you can get that covered through some form of graduate teaching assistantship, amazing opportunity.
Right.
Yep.
So you said, you also mentioned you were defending your dissertation.
Right now I am.
Go back to Baylor, or
no?
What happened?
So some of my colleagues told me about a term where they basically cautioned me, you don't want to get your bachelor's, master's, and doctorate from the same institution.
I see.
It's just, for whatever reason, perhaps it's a credibility thing, perhaps it's just to gain new ideas, new thoughts from different institutions. And so I thought about it, but the cost it's just incredibly high for the doctoral program. But our college president formed a partnership with the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, and around this time raised a number of funds for employees and students at Palo Alto to go to University of Texas Rio Grande Valley. And so I took advantage of the opportunity, which covered about the first 36 hours, essentially having about $1,000 tuition covered via scholarships, and with the tuition reimbursement from my institution, was able to cover just about nearly everything. And so if it were not for that, I probably would not have considered even going back for my doctorate, because at the time, due to student loans, I was, reconsidering that. But because of the number of scholarships, I thought, why not? I mean, it's almost like a free, at the time, 36 hours, which is over half of the program covered and free. So I just decided to take advantage of that.
All right.
Yep.
I think you did well with it. What's your major in?
It's in curriculum and instruction. And so, and the program at University of Texas Rio Grande Valley gave me the opportunity to explore a bunch of different things. So right now my dissertation topic is about how community college faculty teaching at a Hispanic serving institution, how do they exhibit attributes of responsiveness? And what I mean by that is, how can we as educators be responsive to our students in terms of the knowledge of what they know and what they bring? And there are some educators that have what I call a deficit-minded approach, where they view students as, it's the student's fault. The students are not ready. Well, the students, and it's basically blaming the students for every little thing. Well, they're too poor. they're too this, they're too that. And instead of thinking in that deficit-minded approach, I try, the University of Texas Rio Grande really gave me an opportunity to read all sorts of different books and from different theorists and different scholars, and really I had the opportunity to read from different folks that really subscribe to this asset-based approach. What are the different assets that our students bring to us that we can leverage those assets to help them reach that level? Meaning that, yes, students are going to arrive to us where they may not be at the reading level that we may need them to be, but how do we bring them in and raise them up? How do we get them to that level where they can meet whatever goals that we need? And so I hope to explore a little bit more of that through my dissertation work. Wow. And I'm a strong proponent to my colleagues, wherever possible, to have that asset-based approach in thinking about students, in not thinking of them as, hey, they don't have this or they don't have that, but what can we do? What is in our control? Right. There's a lot of things that are not, that we may think are not in our control, but there's a lot of things that we can do, and what can we contribute to the conversation to improve our educational outcomes for our students and really improve ourselves.
When you say asset-based, you mean seeing the student as, for them, and the positive assets that they bring, to leverage those and help them get to the finish line instead of focusing on, well, they don't have all these things. That's
a big part of that. It also includes things like examining their, from a cultural standpoint. So if I know my students more, like I need to, as an educator, I really need to know my students. Mm-hmm. I need to know examples. So in a course, for example, if you're teaching a particular course and you know that students have had parents that grew up in like construction, that grew up in the trades, can you use some of those examples in your assignments where you're lecturing and you're talking about, maybe some of you had parents who worked in construction. Here's an example of how this concept relates to that. And you're trying to illustrate things, and you can even make assignments in that respect as well. So, for example, I've heard of some of our faculty asking our students to interview an elder in the family. Interview an elder in the family to create like an oral history project, and ask them these different questions and try to get to know them, and then write a paper where you reflect on that. Like, how will that guide our future? How will that guide your future? So there's a lot of, from an asset-based approach, it's thinking about what do they bring, what do our students bring into the conversation, but it's also knowing them and having a good understanding about them, but it's also having that respect, that care, that corazon, where you're thinking about how can I show to my students that I care? Because if I have this distant connection with this distant relationship with them where they think, oh, they're just the teacher, they're the instructor, it's hard to build that bond, it's hard to build that connection. And I want my students, and I hope that all of our faculty show that they care. And there's different ways that you can demonstrate care for your students. You can demonstrate care through sharing about yourself, through sharing about your own struggles. You can show care by sharing with them resources. There's all these amazing resources that they may consider, whether it be resources at the college, resources in the community, resources that they may not have imagined, and it shows to them that you're thinking more holistically than just limited to the classroom. Right. Man, you hit a lot of real fruitful nuggets there. You talked about interviewing their family members, and one of the visions of this podcast is to help bridge the gap in generations. Sure. One of the visions in Building a Purpose, the nonprofit, is to help grandparents talk with their grandkids, right? And not maybe not necessarily in directly their grandkids, but those generations where it's very important for us to be able to get the baton from our generations before us and run with it off of their life learned lessons and their experiences, because then we have a disconnected generation. We'll have a disconnected base of students who are trying to do things on their own, right? Yeah. I'm out against the world, and yeah, I think it's always a case by case. You can't really talk in generations, but there's something beautiful about being able to do that and having those questions set up. Another idea too, this year has been
Holy moly, 2024 has been a challenging year, to say the least, in our community here on the South Side, and especially in our, my church community here at St. Joseph's. We've lost some of the pillar men in the church who'd been here. Joe Sanchez, he was on the state championship baseball teams that won back in the early 60s, late 50s, and having him pass, and then seeing one of our deacons just pass, Deacon Mato, and he used to play guitar in the choir with my great grandfather, way back in the day, and he passed in 2000, and having that opportunity to be able to sit down and talk with them in an interview setting and collect that, for them it's too late, but I feel like it always comes down to those times where you're at the funeral and I wish I would have had one more sit down or something, just to have downloaded their brain.
And there's value in students engaging in conversations, in younger people engaging in the conversations with their elders or people who are wiser, who have knowledge in the community. For example, one of my assignments in my speech class that I teach, whether I teach the class online or in person, is a career exploration speech. And part of that speech requires that they interview someone with that job that they aspire for.
That's awesome.
So I want them to, and I give them just a template of what are some interview questions that I want them to start out with, but I also want them just to shift the conversation however they see fit. But some of those topics include, what led you to this career? What inspired you to do this day in and day out? Because I want them to kind of know why they got into it. What are the daily responsibilities? What are the knowledge, skills, and attitudes or abilities associated with a particular job that you should possess, so that they can understand what those soft skills and technical skills may be. But also, talking to them about, does that employee know about the job market related to it? So how do you get started? Like what advice would you have someone? So they ask these questions, but then they ultimately do have to do some research. I ask them to do an occupational analysis of the particular job, because some jobs, 5-10 years from now, you don't know what's going to happen. So
Right.
I want them to think about, is this a job that 10, 20 years from now, in San Antonio especially, and where do you want to go to school? Because there's some jobs where, it's best to go to school locally. That way you can make those connections, build those bonds. But if you want to live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, maybe you need to go to school elsewhere. And so thinking about those things. If you want to work for SpaceX, maybe you might want to go to UTRGV and major in engineering. I don't know. But, thinking about these different types of career opportunities. So talking to people who have that wisdom, have that knowledge, so important. But also, since the pandemic, and I don't know if this is true for most folks, but I notice that students are just struggling to connect, engage, have conversations with others.
Right.
I see, and I even see adults on their phones so much more. So having that ability, that knowledge to be able to continue a conversation. There's an art to a conversation. And if my students can really start a conversation, might start as an interview, and hopefully it might end up a possible mentorship as well.
Yeah, what can we do to get them connected again, It's wild. We've experienced the same thing I think I've shared with you with our numbers last year being a little more challenging with the students who want to participate. But sounds like great research you're doing. I think there's a lot there to be educated and reported on. So how much longer do you have in your...
I'm hoping by summertime. I'm hoping by July or August that I'll be done with the
this
dissertation.
upcoming 2025.
Yes.
Oh,
So
wow.
I plan to complete this. So I need to get permission to begin the data collection, and so basically to do interviews.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to request it through the UTRGV and Palo Alto College. So hopefully I'll be able to get those approvals, and then after that begin data collection, and then move on to the next steps, the writing chapters 4 and 5. I still need to do a couple more revisions for chapters 1 through 3 that they provided feedback for. But if all goes well, then hopefully July or August.
Wow. Could be talking to Dr. Coppola here this time next year.
Hoping, fingers crossed at some point, yes.
Oh, that's awesome. What are your strengths?
Strengths, I often struggle with strengths, kind of what are mine, because I tend to be a modest person when it comes to kind of myself. But if I had to consider my strengths, I'd say if I am given a task, I am very resourceful in figuring out who do I need to speak with, or what do I need to research to find the answer to that. A second strength is I am very task oriented, and that can also be a weakness, because when it comes to very task oriented, I figure out things like, okay, what is the timeline for this? What does it need to be done by? Who are the different people that I need to involve? What needs to be done? How do I project management plan all the different things associated with this? And then I figure out, almost in my head, kind of piecing together everything that needs to be done, and then I put it down on paper. Okay, this is what needs to happen. And then I'm also, as a strength, I'd say facilitation. So meeting with teams to kind of facilitate, this is what needs to be done. This is what we have. What can we do to get accomplish this? I also consider as a strength of mine, my servant leadership. Whatever my team needs, I'm there for them. I try to use the term, I'm your supporter. I am the person that's going to help support you any way I can to accomplish your goals. I like to work with the people that I work with so that we can identify what are your professional goals, and as they relate to supporting our students, how can we accomplish those goals? Is it a 3-year plan that it's going to take us to get there, and what can we do to achieve certain milestones in the meantime so that we can kind of be accountable to each other and know what needs to be accomplished. So those are just a couple of my strengths, in addition to I think that I can be a good listener when hearing people out and try to understand and empathize with them. I feel like I've come from a kind of a diverse enough background that I can relate to individuals and understand struggles, and I can understand vulnerability. I can understand when folks need help, and yeah.
Okay. Well, great strengths. Well described. I think those are qualities I've seen in you over the years for sure. What's your greatest weakness?
Oh, I knew you were coming to this one. So again, with the task-oriented nature, and I know this is something I try to work on, it's just that sometimes with the task-orientedness that I need to remember to be mindful of people, and remember that people are the most important thing when it comes to doing stuff. Most important when supporting our students. And so weakness would be just so focused on getting tasks done. And so, for example, we talked earlier how I was supporting just a number of different programs, and I've caught myself a couple times, even just responding to an email, even just replying to an email, not including the normal greetings, like good morning and this and this, even on an email.
Right.
And it's very direct. And so I catch myself doing this, and I have to remember, okay, when someone is reading my email, especially someone that I've not interacted with in maybe a week or longer, that email is like a conversation that I'm having with them, and simply saying good morning, this, or so and so, I hope you're having a great day, and here's my question next.
Right.
I need to exchange those pleasantries. And so for me, just remembering that even though things need to get done, every communication, whether it's an email, it is an opportunity to be almost like a kind blessing to another individual. Because who knows what they're experiencing that day? Maybe they're stressed. Maybe they're going through some things, and
right.
I totally understand.
Right.
Whether it be personal things or overwhelmed at work, but we can be a gift to others in how we communicate with them. And so for me, that's just I need to have that mindfulness more often, and I have to tell myself at the beginning of my day, don't forget that.
Yeah.
Because if I don't remind myself, then it's easy to forget.
Right. Yeah, that's a great one. What is there a quote you live by?
For me, it's probably the golden rule: the do unto others as you'd want done unto you. And for me, it's you want to be someone. I want to be someone that people think back and the person that I did good work, that I contributed, I helped, that people enjoyed being around me, and maybe we had to do a lot of difficult work, and maybe it was, but hopefully it was good work. Hopefully it was meaningful work. So for me, it's the golden rule, and just trying to be kind to others, and as we grow older, we make all sorts of mistakes over our lifetime, and I know that I've made plenty of mistakes, and I'm thankful. I think to myself, would I sometimes when praying, you think, do I regret certain things? And I'm grateful for the learning that has occurred. I would not be as grateful. I would not be as grateful for everything in my life now if it were not for those failures before.
Right.
And that's why generally I tell myself, as I age, the years get better and better, and I'm just so grateful for everything, and I'm so grateful for what I can do and what I can contribute to others. And I just need to remind myself, slow it down sometimes. And but for me, that would be my motto, my quote.
Okay, I think I read a post of yours. Don't worry, I didn't do a background check on you. In 1970,
right? There was a Twitter. There was a Twitter
said exactly the opposite of what you just said.
Right.
No. I read a post of yours about your journey into education. I think it was your 20th anniversary or what?
Yeah, 20 years at Palo Alto. Last, I started as an adjunct and part-time instructor in 2004, and it was interesting because I went to Palo Alto. I took some classes while I was in high school, right?
Yes.
There you go. And but from Memorial High School, I had to take 2 buses to get to Palo Alto. So I took I think it was like the 79 from Ruiz to Zarzamora, and then you take another bus, I think at the time it was a 524 Zarzamora all the way. So it was like about a 90-minute total. But I took a class with this professor, Dr. Dorothy Hacker. I don't know if you took a class with her, but she philosophy. And Mr. Armstrong as well for history. But when I took the class with Dr. Hacker, I remember I graduated with my master's from Baylor, and Palo Alto was having this adjunct career fair. Anyone interested in working in Palo Alto, come out. And this is back still the relatively early days of the internet, right? So it wasn't minimal social media.
Right.
I think there was a newspaper, Express News. Maybe the San Antonio Light was around there at that time. But I saw this, showed up, and it was Dr. Hacker at this booth, and she says she's hiring. And I said, well, I'm looking to teach in speech, if you have any opportunities. Well, the speech chair is not here at the moment, but, I'll let her know that you're applying, you're interested, thank you for your resume. I brought it. And then by the time you know it, January 2024 started. January 2004 started as an adjunct instructor, and been there for 20 years. And back then, colleges have advanced so much. So back then, I remember I was simply handed a textbook, and here you go. Now, we've advanced so much in the spirit of continuous improvement that every single one of our new folks, before they start teaching, they're shown, here's how you teach. Here's what you're supposed to do. Here's the platform for teaching. Here's how you set it up. Here's what the curriculum entails. Here's, how do you design your course? How do you develop the activities, the assessments? It's just incredible how it's come a long way. But I'm grateful for these 20 plus years.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, geez, I feel like going through that process and how you described it, I certainly was handed a little bit more than a textbook when I came on. Okay. And the men's worship, Dr. Garcia has been super generous with his time, and I think I've called him real late,
he's
after
amazing.
The kids are asleep, and it's not a zoo at the house anymore. And he's
Right.
like, Jesus, let me just walk you through this. I've done this, and been like, yeah, it was just this, and the spirit of collaboration is certainly been warm and welcoming, coming on as an adjunct, and the training, as much training as I do in all the different things I dabble in, it was nice to have, and at least as a reference or a backbone to begin, because my expectations of coming into education from this aspect have been very. I'm not a traditional brick and mortar type of guy, sure. And I think I went to college, similar reasons as you described, and thinking I wasn't the best student, I wasn't this, and so I think coming into it from that approach and reaching the students who we've described in a lot of our conversations right now have been my focus, and I feel like it's not a true. I'm not a Harvard guy. I'm not right. Sure. I'm a public school and type of trade. I mean, even though I didn't get certificates and all these things, I picked up welding along the way. I didn't get a certificate in being a mechanic. I'm working on my car, my truck, or older trucks, and so I think having that community to welcome you in as a newer teacher now, not to say it wasn't welcome and warm then, but certainly sets you up for positioning your new instructors to be successful in the classrooms. So
that's one of the reasons why I love working where I work. I mean, the people, the community, the ability to work with such highly intelligent individuals that are very collegial, just super friendly, with that service mindset. It's one thing that I've worked for organizations where you think about why are we in this, and a previous employment in the private sector, it was make money, provide clients with the products and services that they want, make them happy. Hopefully there's minimal returns, things like that. And now I feel like just the contribution to our community, and that we hire like-minded individuals, whether it be we hire folks part-time or full-time, all of them have that mission focus of wanting to support our community. And I think that's one of the reasons why we also, our college system is considered one of the great places to work. It's just a place where you feel connected, where you feel supported. You're at no point do you feel unprepared. You feel like you have exactly what you need to know how to support our students. And if you don't know, there's that comfort level with it's okay to ask, and there's folks that are going to show you. There's folks that are not going to shame you. They're going to walk you through exactly what you need to help support people.
Right. And certainly it looks like I think you've got 30 faculty under you, or some.
We have about full-time about almost 60. Part-time and full-time about 60. So we have a lot of folks, and as we grow bigger because of the bachelor's degree,
800 to 1,000 students you reach. Sure.
We have about just in the business management program, we have about almost 600 students, including about 370 for the bachelor's, and with the associate in entrepreneurship and management, about 600, and then on the cybersecurity side about 150, and the network cloud computing a little bit less than 100. I'm also recently transitioning away from supporting our advanced manufacturing, engineering, and logistics programs that have, roughly about 150 students. Yeah. But those are some amazing programs, and I'm just grateful for the privilege of being able to engage with such amazing faculty and the students, as they come up to us. And I mentioned to you that these communication exchanges with students they can be a gift. They are giving us an opportunity to help them in whether it be they're sharing their need, that they have a need for tutoring, that they have a need for emergency assistance, whatever it is. Right. And hopefully we're well aware of these resources to provide that support, and that we have the resources available to provide support. So. Wow. Yeah. So I mean, even more than what I thought, right? Over 60 faculty, adjunct and full time, and
over 1,000 students across all your different chaired positions and departments. I think the leadership certainly falls top down, and it's just testament to the servant leader. I mean, everything I'm hearing from you it's not a shocker to me why you've done so well, and so has those who are under you. In doing that, what are your values?
Yeah. For me, I would say values of service. Giving forward. There's when I was younger, and sometimes with individuals who grow up without, there's a tendency to be selfish, right? And I'll tell you that it's taken a while for me, and I do struggle personally with kind of, I need to be giving of, so for example, giving of time, resources, things like that. And so for me, service with regard to just helping others, helping, being thoughtful of the people around me, and trying to kind of imagine myself, what are they thinking? Trying to be as empathetic as possible of their situation. So my values are service, being thoughtful for others, being caring and compassionate wherever possible, being fair. I'm a firm believer in being fair, but that's kind of a hard one to kind of consider because it requires so much, knowledge and background, and sometimes you don't know the full story of things. So I try to err on the side of caution and just be caring and graceful wherever possible. Graceful and forgiving. We have messages at church where we talk about often just, God was very graceful with us. So, at work, we be graceful towards one another and compassionate in knowing that, not everyone knows, everything, and, that willingness to learn. And probably another value for me is just this whole continuous improvement. How can I get better? Because now I don't want to get better in everything. I have certain buckets of, I want to get better in this.
Right.
So I want to get better at my habits. How can I improve my habits so that they're healthy, so that I get up at a reasonable time? I'm still trying to push myself to wake up early enough to work out. That's I did that a couple times, but it's so challenging. I remember hearing Mark Wahlberg. I don't know if you follow him at all, but he talked about how a guy gets up at 4 a.m. to work out, and I'm just amazed. But he goes to sleep early.
Right.
And so I'm trying to, wake up go to sleep at a decent time, 9:30. And so those are just some of the values that I espouse, especially continuous improvement. How can I get better? How can I be a better father? How can I be a better educator? How can I be a better supporter of the people I work with? And, how can I be better?
Right. Okay. That's good ones. What goals are you pursuing right now?
The dissertation is probably one of the bigger goals, but a second one is professional goal of how can I make more people aware of our educational programs at the college, specifically our bachelor's program. How can I link employers to folks who are graduating from our bachelor's degrees so that they can be hired for potential job opportunities? And then probably my last goal is, how do I improve my own courses that I'm teaching? So I still teach, and I want to get better. And time.
Is that unheard of?
No, well,
because sometimes when you go to the dark side, right?
Yeah.
That's what they call it.
Sure.
You lose that, right?
Yeah. I think many of our administrators, they do try to teach, and for me, I just want to be a better instructor. And so I can look at, here's all the successes in my class, here's all the students that have flourished, but I'm also looking at, students who did not pass my class. What occurred? What happened? Mm-hmm. What can I do differently? And so every semester I always examine that. I'm looking at the analytics that we have available to us. So at what point did students stop participating? What happened? What was occurring that week? Was it something in my assignments? Do I need to be a little bit more clear in my communication? Do I need to be more uplifting? Do I need to send more positive announcements, notes? Do I need to send a video announcement of what I'm doing? And so for me, that's a big one. Like, what can I do as an educator to do better for my students?
Right. Yeah, that's a good one. So the timeline segment, the purpose of this is so that this is our tool. This is what we use to bridge the gaps in generations. This has been probably one of our most powerful workshops that we've had, where students and mentors both share experiences through times of hardship and through times of great success. And so those are what we call the great equalizers. They're the things that we all hurt the most from, and the things we all joy for the most. When somebody who loses a father and they're 50 years old, it still hurts like you lost your dad when you're 5 years old, right? And those things are what really connects generations, I believe, where a lot of times, sometimes the older generations have a little chip on their shoulder, like, you need to respect me because they put their time in. And it was probably harder with respect when they were there, right? And instead, it's I'm going to share with you some of the things that I went through, and how I learned from them. And you're no longer an authority figure, or an adult telling a student what to do. You're their peer. You're there with them. You're a mentor. You're their friend. So, if you wouldn't mind sharing an impactful event that happened each year of your life, and as I mentioned, take it with a grain of salt, or dive into it as deep as you like, and hopefully hear from you now.
So at 0, birth, grateful to be born, grateful to be alive, and I think about how grateful I am, and I don't say this arrogantly, but I say that how grateful I am to be born in the United States of America.
Right.
I mean, wow. I tell my kids, all the conflicts that happen in other parts of the world, have running water, pipes, for going to the restroom, being able to use a toilet. I mean, I can't even imagine. So I'm grateful just to be born in San Antonio, Texas. Very grateful. But the togetherness with at the time that I would say with my mom and dad, because my mom and dad separated probably around the time that I was around 3 or so. So just having that togetherness of a family, while I don't remember, thinking about it, grateful. At 2 years old, being able to spend time with at the time my grandfather on my dad's side lived here in San Antonio. So I have very vague memories of around 2 years old, just him trying to show me how to swim. But, at 2 years old, you can't really, you can try to float, but that's about it. And I still probably remember that at probably the age of 3 and 4. He was really big. I think he was a fireman. My father, my grandfather on my dad's side was a fireman in New York, and so they lived here in an apartment for a couple of years while they were together, and even about a year or so after they divorced. And so I remember visiting him with a couple times at their apartment complex and just going swimming and having that memory. And it's just really fun being able to have that memory. One of the few memories that I have of my grandfather on my dad's side. And then about 4, I'd probably say that probably continued, around 4 years old. I remember probably asking my mom, hey, am I ever going to get a brother? And I remember that because she made me remember. She remembers, you asked me for a brother, so I went out and, I got you a brother. So that's the way she says
I did what I had to do.
I did what I had to do. And then so I remember probably about 5 or 6 years old, the birth of my brother, and around 6th grade starting. And I remember when I was 5 years old, I did kinder actually. I did kinder at St. John Bosco. So I don't know if you remember, if you know where St. John
Right there on
Bosco.
Couples?
Well, it's not
That's
on
Berkman.
Couples.
That's St.
Yeah, that's
John
St. John
Berkman.
Bosco. St. John Bosco is off of 36th Street, and kind of like, you know where 90 and West Commerce kind of separate.
Mm-hmm.
So around there, it's near a convent. So I went to school there in kinder, and I remember I had my first kind of, little girlfriend, like first little
Yeah.
and my first kind of buddy at the time. And then sixth grade, first grade, Las Palmas. So around, I'm sorry, not sixth grade, but when I was 6 years old, started first grade at Las Palmas, and 7 years old, I love that. While I was going to Las Palmas for elementary school, my grandfather and grandma, they lived off of 24th Street, right behind Our Lady of the Lake University. So there was like a dead-end street where you couldn't get into Our Lady of the Lake, but it was basically behind it. So they lived on 24th Street off of, 24th and 25th Street areas, and there's really not a good kind of landmark. It's right around Las Palmas. So I remember my mom would drop me off there at my grandfather's, and this is on my mom's side, and he was really her stepdad, but she dropped me off, and he would make me every day eggs with ketchup, and he put a boatload of ketchup on there. So that was a memory that I had, just because, they both my grandparents died very young. And so just having that memory and knowing that while my mom and him did not have the best relationship as her stepdad, that was his giving of love to me.
Right.
He woke up 6 something in the morning, made me eggs, and I guess that was the only dish he knew how to make, scrambled eggs.
And ketchup.
Yeah, and ketchup. And then when I was 8 years old, I remember third grade, having my first, real friends around that. That's kind of when you're developing that friendship. And one of my first friends was this guy named Claudio Solis. And I think now he works for the city of San Antonio in their sanitation department. But really, really cool guy, good guy, and has some amazing kids. And don't talk to him as much as I should, but you know how that is. Sometimes you lose track of folks and have different interests. And when I was 9 years old, I remember living at the Mirasolis homes for a couple years. And, man, I remember just some interesting times there. There was, because, again, it's basically the housing projects. I remember living there and making friends, seeing some of the most beautiful murals. And one of my favorite murals is, I don't know if you remember that book, Outcry in the Barrio, the book Outcry in the Barrio, and somebody made the most beautiful mural of the front cover of that book, and it was just beautiful. And I tried to go back, and I've tried to find a picture of it, can't find a picture of it anywhere.
No, I know.
I've tried.
Snapped a shot of it.
No one took a picture. And then
Take them for granted, I think, maybe.
the history, yeah. And I remember while living there, two things, because my mom was going back to school. Around that time, she decided to go back to school as a cafeteria worker, and she was a part of this program that's very similar to Project Quest. And so they paid for everything and tried to support her so she can go back to school, but that meant she was working a lot. I mean, I remember right after school, we were, being taken care of by my grandma, and we rarely saw my mom. I remember good memories between this age of 9, 10, and 11, where my mom would, this is back in the day where they didn't give you the food stamps traditionally, but my mom went to a line and came back with this big, giant gallon of government honey. I don't know if you've ever seen these, but it was they called it government honey and government cheese. And so, and they'd give you like flour and stuff like that, basically stuff to make. So rather than you getting a card to go, to HEB, or back then it was like Handy Andy or Centeno, they give you, here's a jar of honey that's supposed to last you 2 years. And I think it did last like 5 years. The cheese went much quicker. It was basically like, imagine like the Velveeta, but like less quality.
Sure.
So I remember just being able to get that and just playing with my brothers and sisters and just joking, like putting, I think one time we drenched each other in honey, just joking around. And I remember one time my grandmother taking care of us, and we had these 2 bunk beds because at the time my cousin lived with us because her mom had passed at an early age, so my cousin lived with us, so it was the four of us. So we had 2 bed bunks over here, 2 bed bunks over here. And I remember we were jumping. My poor grandma, 70-something years old, we were jumping from one bed bunk to the other. I don't know. I'm a big dude, even at that young age. I don't know how those beds could take it. But I remember we were jumping so much that I went downstairs. And back in the day, we didn't have the flat screen TVs they had today. For us, we had a 13-inch big old monster thing. And to have a 13-inch TV was like a big deal back then. And I go downstairs because it was like this, 2-story kind of project, in the project's home. And the TV's not there. And the door's open. I'm like, what the heck? Where is it? And I call my grandma. She comes down and we look in the kitchen area. Somebody, and those homes, they had burglar bars on it.
Yeah.
Somebody somehow crawled through this small little burglar bar space. And we were so loud that they broke in and took our 13-inch TV. And thankfully, they didn't do anything because back then there was a lot of people that were, sniffing paint in the project areas. And I remember another time we would look out the window and see people doing stuff. But I think too, man, I'm so grateful to live where I live. And I tell my kids, be grateful for safety. Be grateful to have that safety. So I think back on those times. And then I remember when I was 10 years old, I was about in 5th grade. My mom was finally able to move us out of the Metasolas, and we moved to this rental home right by Las Palmas, and we stayed there for a while. And that was right near my buddy Claudio's grandparents' house, so we were able to visit quite often. Had a great time. I would go over there after school, and it was really cool. Just because by that time my grandfather, wasn't as close to him, but because he was passing around that time. And just being able to hear from Claudio's grandparents and the closeness that he had, and kind of imagining, I didn't appreciate it at the moment, but thinking, man, I'd love to have that type of environment where my grandkids can just come over to the house, come over, and how cool is that? Just sharing stories, and it's just amazing. It was amazing. And then 11 years old, I was in the 6th grade. That was the first year that I think I had actually pretty decent grades. And I was able to go that summer to the prep program, and it just so happened
You did the prep program.
But get this, I went to the prep program for one summer. It was at Palo Alto, and this is at the time where the campus is not what it is now. It's much smaller,
right,
or much bigger now. But back then, I remember I did that prep program, and I was goofing off. It was a summer. Most people don't want to work.
Kids, why would you? I get it.
We joked way too much. And I just remember halfway through the prep program, they were like, I think you want to enjoy your summer. I don't think this is for you. So I was like,
He gave you the boot.
You're right. They gave me the boot.
Oh.
But it's all good. 7th grade, I started Holy Cross. And I remember around that year, my mom she was able to purchase her. She was graduated from nursing school, was able to work for a year. And by that time, we were able to find a deal on a home. And think about it, back then, I think it was a $36,000 homes you can get back then. And she could have probably, you think about it in hindsight, guilt and all that. Like, Mom, you could have bought a home, what would be now Alamo Ranch.
Right.
And, it would probably been the same price. But we happen to live in the West Side. But those regrets, try not to worry about them. I'm like, you know what? I would not have met my wife. I wouldn't have been grateful for the experiences that I have, and so much more can change.
Right.
So that was really cool.
Where your family's at is important too.
Oh, totally. And then in 8th grade, I remember some of the academic struggles that I had in 8th grade. And I remember at Holy Cross, I failed another science course. And so I remember for the graduation was at some church. Maybe it was a church right off of what is it? General McMullen, but all the way up General McMullen North, a church, Holy Rosary, I think, or Holy Family, one of those. And they said, okay, have your parents drop you off at the graduation ceremony. So my mom dropped me off. And then they tapped me on the shoulder. Oh, you didn't graduate. You're not going to be able to walk with the class. Like, okay. And then they just basically kind of dismissed me, be gone with you kind of thing. So I did like the walk, you heard of the walk of shame. So I did the walk of the shame throughout the whole West Side. And I remember walked basically,
jeez.
I mean, it was about maybe about a mile and a half away from home, or from a payphone that I could find. And I didn't have any change on me. So, yeah, what an embarrassment. But I did summer school and was able to finish that and, go to ninth grade at Memorial High School. And ninth grade
That's a lot for
Memorial.
you to take on by yourself. I mean, jeez.
Yeah. But ninth grade, I remember in ninth grade, a lot of different things. I remember, the first semester of my ninth grade, skipping, it was crazy because at Memorial, I remember I started there with one guy that I knew from Holy Cross. So we just sat wherever we could in the cafeteria. We didn't know anyone. And so I remember sitting over there, and all of a sudden this kind of albino guy sits right near us. And then about 10 minutes later, we're surrounded by like 10 dudes. And they say something this guy couldn't make out what they said, and then all of a sudden they're beating him up. 10 guys. It really was 6 to start, maybe 5 or 6 guys beating him up. And then the other guys looked to my buddy and I like, do you want some of this too? And we're like, I don't know this guy, what do you? And then so we're basically see all these 10 guys on this guy. And I remember this guy and I were just kind of honestly fear of, well, what if these people see us again and get beat up? So I remember there was a time that, eating lunch in the restrooms for like a couple of days. And then I remember after a while eating lunch in the library, taking my lunch up there. And it was a good thing. You think about this in the moment, it was a blessing that happened, because while I was in the library, I was approached by this person that said, hey, I see you in the library reading the newspaper. At Memorial, no one reads a newspaper. Would you like to be on the debate team? And I say, give it a shot. So even though I didn't really apply myself grade-wise, I thought, give it a shot. I was playing football at the time. I just started playing football for Memorial, and I wasn't that good. Didn't really apply myself. I was very lazy back then. And I tried my hand at this debate thing, and I remember going to a debate tournament at Wimberley, Texas. Wimberley's a good distance from Memorial. And all of a sudden, and I think I was like 0-3 at the debate tournament. I sucked. So on the way back, we're in this van, and this person climbs up from the back row to the next row. And then I see her climbing back from the next row to the next row. And I'm like, so she starts talking to me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm 14 years old. I don't know what the heck's going on. But it turned out this is my wife.
Your wife. Wow.
So on the debate team, we happened to meet, and I didn't really apply she was a senior that year, and so she was going away to college, and so we didn't really I didn't think much was going to happen, but she wanted to see if we can work out this long distance relationship. So I remember working that out, even at 15 years old. And at 15 years old, my 10th grade year, I didn't really kind of see much happening school-wise. I wasn't really applying myself, but I still participated on the speech team, here and there. But then I remember my 11th grade, trying to apply myself a little bit better school-wise. My grades were a little bit better. And then by the 12th, going into the 11th grade and the 12th grade, I had an opportunity to attend a debate camp. And the big thing is, all the big affluent schools in San Antonio, if you're going to be successful in debate, you need to go to a debate camp. And so we were able to find the money as a school to send my partner and I to a debate camp in UT Austin. And we ended up winning the camp tournament, which is unheard of. Like freaking two boys, huh? Memorial High School. Yeah. Memorial freaking High School. It was unheard of. And it was crazy. And by that time, I was the coach that taught the camp was this big time guy, and I was actually recruited at this camp. Like, hey, consider University of Louisville, consider University of Kentucky, consider this other guy, consider University of Texas. And that's where I started thinking about, well, maybe I could debate, and even though my grades are terrible, maybe I can at least get a scholarship there. And so I remember my 12th grade year, it was pretty cool. We debated at the Trinity University debate tournament, and my debate partner and I, he was kind of a somewhat newer to debate, but pretty good as well. We finished with a 2-2 record, which is not ideal, but they said, hey, wait around for the speaker awards and the awards. And I was like, why? We went 2-2. So we waited around. they called out the speaker awards, and when they came to the number 2 speaker, they said my name, and I was like, what the heck? A Trinity University? Are you kidding? This was a national tournament where they had folks from Houston, from Louisiana, from all over coming over. And then throughout my 12th grade year, I competed at tournaments, and we were the first, Memorial High School, my partner and I were the first one to go to the, they have this state tournament. There's the TFA tournament and there's the UIL tournament. So we were able to go for that. And so 12th grade was pretty cool. Won a bunch of different awards. At the UIL state tournament, I won the top speaker award, which was pretty cool. So there was just a lot of different things that happened that 12th grade year. Was able to get good grades, got into Baylor. Didn't get as much scholarships as I would have liked, but hey, you know. And then 9th grade, participated, struggled as a first semester student at Baylor. I think had like a 2.6 GPA. And I remember at one point my debate coach at the time, and she laid into me. She gave me the yelling that I needed. So sometimes we need a good yelling. Yeah. And she gave me a yelling, and I mean, she was like this small 4 feet 10 inch blonde haired petite woman, and here I am, and she just boom, like I was afraid. And then she had this study hall sessions where I tried to work on it, and all throughout college, just trying to get better, be a better student, be a better debater. And thankfully, I had the opportunity to participate as the president of the debate team my junior and senior year. And then afterwards, 23, 24, finished as a graduate teaching assistant. And then I remember those early years after graduating, I struggled to find a job, because at the time, the economy, the jobs that I was thinking I was going to go into that everyone else from my program, from my master's degree program was going into.
Right after 9/11 or before 9/11?
No, this is right after 9/11. This is around the Enron thing. I don't know if you remember the Enron.
Enron, and there was some other companies that fell down as well, Anderson Consulting, and a lot of those companies were hiring master's degree graduates. So I was like,
well, shoot, where am I going to work at now? And so could not find, I thought about applying to be a, high school debate coach. And, I did apply for a couple of jobs to do that. But, at the end of the day, it just didn't feel like, thankfully at the time, things didn't work out the way they did. Mm-hmm. And then I started working at 24, found something as like a call center supervisor where I can get some experience, and did that for a year or two, and then worked probably around 25, 26, where I worked at this disease detection company in account management, signing clients for, drug and disease testing, Planned Parenthood companies and a bunch of other companies that do drug testing and stuff like that. And that was a really cool experience, from dealing with the interpersonal side of things, building some amazing relationships with people. And then after that, I like what you told me about your mom worked at QVC, because when I was
you said serving cost center, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Is that where you were?
Well, later on, QVC.
Both in their order entry and customer service area. And I worked in their variable labor, where I supported employees that would work like 2-3 hours at a time during our busy shifts. So I really enjoyed that. And all the while doing this, while coming back to San Antonio, I was able to get that part
gig at Palo Alto College teaching. And, I never imagined it could be, because even though I went to Palo Alto way back when, I never even thought working at a college was even a possibility. I thought, you have to have this degree and you can't work, no, I could never, I'm from, and I know it's partly this kind of imposter syndrome where I feel like, oh, I'm from the West Side. Like, people from the West Side don't work there, people from the West Side.
And, that kind of affected me for a number of years. That kind of imposter syndrome, kind of feeling like I'm from, even you would think you graduate from Baylor University, you can do this, you can do that. But I still had that imposter syndrome that, no, I can't. No, this isn't for me. I could never achieve that. And people were hired for full-time teaching positions there. And I just thought, well, they were asked to apply. And so I never applied because no one ever asked me to apply. Maybe it's, again, leading to that imposter syndrome. Maybe it's just where I'm from. Maybe I should apply. And then finally, they do tell me, hey, you should apply. And so I ended up applying, and things kind of worked their way out, and it was for a temporary position, and then when that temporary position was about to end, they said, "Why don't you apply for this director position?" It's like, director. Are you serious? Like, big old imposter syndrome comes before me. Like, no way I can get that. And then, things work out. And, one of the things that I look at that I find so much value in is that even when I've been overwhelmed, even when I feel in and over my head, I'm in over my head, there's so much that can be learned from that experience. And so I always tell people, like, even when you're so overwhelmed with life, whether it be you have your family obligations, all these work obligations, enjoy that moment. And at the time, I didn't, really appreciate that. And now when I do get overwhelmed, which, occasionally I do, I remember to appreciate these moments, because these are gifts that we have before us that so much is to be gained from them. And being in over my head for certain jobs caused me to improve my strength of, I need to be resourceful. I don't know everything. And it's okay, I don't know everything. I need to figure out how to do stuff. And so when I'm thrown into the wolves, so to speak, I'm able to just figure stuff out. I figure out how to survive. And hopefully all of us, can learn that at varying age levels, and hopefully through sharing with students, I'm able to share that with, hey, we
need to be resilient. We need to be resourceful. Here's how we do that. Here's my experience. And so that was just incredible for me. And then was able to just continue working at the college, and just, during this time, I remember after graduate school, when I finished finishing my master's degree, I told my wife, okay, now that I finished, now it's your turn. So she decided to go back to school. And so she finished. It took her a couple of years to finish her prerequisites and the nursing program at San Antonio College, but she finished about 12 years ago, or no, maybe about 13 years ago. And from that experience, we were able to, we decided, are we going to take a trip to Italy? Now that we have this, or are we going to get a down payment on a house? And we chose the house. So did the house, and just grateful for that, because it was around a time where, the housing market in San Antonio at the time, it was like 2008, 2009, took a little dip, and was able to get, a good deal. And later had our first kid, and I'm grateful that I had a kid later in life, because, things happen for a reason. And even though we had been together a while, I don't know if I had the patience at that time to be the father that I am. And I'm grateful that I'm blessed to have a child at the age that I am now, because I feel like I'm more mature, and I can give better of me to her and to my youngest. So, kind of here we are, 45 years of age, just caring for these kids, just trying to help them be the very best people they can be, enjoying what I'm doing at the college, and just trying to figure out, how can I be a better father? How can I be a better educator? And how can I be a better colleague? And how can I be a better person for our community? How can I be a better Christian? What can I do differently? Where can I take advantage of these opportunities for service? So that's my timeline.
All right. What a story. What, if you don't mind me asking, just to dive a little bit more into the educational side of your career in education. Can you elaborate on your jumps and transitions as an adjunct to where you're at now?
Sure.
So that if anybody wants to be a professor at a college, community college.
So if anyone has at our college, you have your workforce programs, and you have your arts and sciences type programs. And to teach in the traditional workforce programs, where you teach, welding, IT, advanced manufacturing, you generally need to have at least an associate's degree, but also 3 years of work experience. So we're looking for our workforce programs, individuals that have done the job. Now, just because you have the minimum doesn't mean you're going to get hired. You might not even be interviewed, because we look to the different sort matrices to see to rank candidates. But that's the minimum on the workforce side. And to teach on the arts and sciences side, which include your prerequisites, your English, your history, your government, you need to have at least either a master's degree or 18 graduate hours in that discipline. And so if you have 18 hours of government, graduate level, you can probably teach for that. And the best way to look at jobs are just type in, where you're living, the different universities, the different community colleges, and just see what their job site is. Look for part-time faculty positions and see, what are some opportunities, and apply. I think I applied. I worked at Our Lady of the Lake one semester and or 2 semesters, and
As an adjunct?
As an adjunct, and just I'm grateful to work where I do. And actually, I'll say that Alamo colleges I feel they pay very competitively for adjunct faculty. Just my strong opinion is, compared to the places that I've worked at before, and the requirements, we pay a competitive wage for adjunct faculty. So, and plus we train you. So that's just a great thing that, you don't have to worry about not being trained. We will train you. We will work with you to get you to the point where you need to be as an adjunct faculty. So those are the minimum requirements. And for me, I started as an adjunct in 2004, and then it wasn't until around 2010 where I was asked to consider applying for a full-time position. I did a full-time temporary instructor position, which, we now call visiting lecturer. We'll occasionally hire if there's a need. And then when there's a maximum limit on the number of years you can be a visiting lecturer. I believe it's 2 years. And so after that, that's when that opening as a director came about. So I was the director of instructional and professional development, which basically meant that for the college, I was responsible for our assessment of student learning outcomes, for accreditation, and for student learning to see whether or not our students are learning at the programmatic level, but also the college-wide level. Professional development I was responsible for, our faculty development programs at the college. I was responsible for our quality enhancement plan, which was at the time the use of problem-based learning and using that as a pedagogical strategy with our students. And I was responsible for our distance learning, so responsible for training folks for teaching online, for accountability of our distance learning, and continuous improvement practices of our distance learning. So it gave me an opportunity to get my hands in a lot of different things and learn things that I'm just grateful to know and share with others. And then after that, the full-time speech position did finally open up, and I applied for that. And so did that for a couple of years and had an opportunity to learn from that position. And then at the time, a mentor of mine said, hey, there's an opening for the chair for IT and business. Would you like to maybe, throw your name in a hat for an interim position so you can try it out for a year? And after kind of thinking about it, I said, why not? And so I did that, and again, felt, in over my head, but a lot of learning. And thankfully, it's been a great ride. Had the opportunity after the first year to apply for the kind of more permanent chair position. And then departments have been combined, and there's been permutations of various sorts. So I've had the opportunity to lead as chair various programs that I never could have imagined. I've had the opportunity to chair our cosmetology program, our advanced manufacturing, engineering, logistics, our network cloud computing, cyber programs, our business management, and now our bachelor's degree in business management. So just a wide variety. At one point, I was supporting 15 of our 18 workforce programs that we offered. And I think back to how did we make it? And it was the people. We had amazing people that just made it happen. And you do what you can. You do what you can, and you serve what you can. You think about, let me just get through this day, and am I doing what I need to do to be in compliance, but also am I serving my students? And we were able to get it done. And now we have just an amazing group of staffing, where we have several directors and chairs in our area where we're able to balance everything. And so I'm just grateful that just for a short time that I had that opportunity to oversee those different programs for a short time while an interim was while someone was being hired for that program. But I'm just grateful for those opportunities to lead where I can and provide support.
Wow. What a career. And you're just getting started, only 20 years in.
Yeah. I tell my, when people tell me, what do you want to do? And because there was a time I thought about being a college president. There was a time I thought about that would be my trajectory. But you know what? I'm so grateful for this. I'm so grateful for the people I get to work with. I work with some super smart individuals and very collegial. I tell folks that because my mom passed away, and I want to enjoy life. I want to enjoy time with my family. And so I feel that when I don't want to retire. I want to be the person that is teaching in my 70s and possibly 80s if I can make it. And I think I'm a great faculty. I think I'm a great teacher. I think I'm a great educator. Because when you're a teacher, when you're an educator, you take on so many roles.
Right.
You are a social worker. You're a guidance counselor. Mm-hmm. You are an instructional designer. You're all these different. You are everything to that student in the moment. And I feel that that's something that I want to give of myself, that when all is said and done with this role of this chair, that I want to teach. I want to teach full time. I want to go back to the classroom and have my summers off, travel, and have some Christmas time off. But I want to teach into my 70s, and if I physically can do it, into my 80s, and totally do that, and just keep my brain sharp. It's so important for us as we get older, stay sharp. And teaching is one of those fields where if there's ever a time someone is thinking about retirement from their primary job in the industry, and they're thinking about, well, what am I going to do next? I so recommend teaching. It is such teaching has given me so much. It's given me so much at this college, and I'm just blessed. I'm so grateful for the students you meet, the people that I meet, and the cause that what I have the opportunity to do. I would recommend to everyone, and it's not going to get you rich. It's gonna help you sustain your life, your lifestyle, but just the people and everything else. I would so recommend to people, before you retire completely from the workforce, think about maybe teaching in the twilight of your career, because it is such a fulfilling career, and you give so much, and it's great. It's so much to be grateful for.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I think when you mentioned retirement just now, about teaching and retirement, that's a great gig, especially for doing fulfilling work. When you get to most people don't think about doing that type of work where you really give back that way, and so they're that far down the line. Well, you said the twilight of your career. You mean like the high point or the end?
Well, really, towards the end.
Okay.
But I think it can also be a high point, because there's many of I interact with a bunch of people that when I ask folks, what is your primary job? What are you doing? Well, I'm trying to provide value to clients, and for some folks that's value. They're satisfying a need that someone has. But there are a lot of folks that say, I wish I had a higher purpose in life. I wish that God gave me an opportunity to fulfill a calling.
Right.
And for some folks, that calling is done through community service. They started a nonprofit, a church, giving through the church, volunteering through the church. And I'm just grateful that every day I go to work, like Sunday night, I must be one of those rare folks. Sunday night, I am excited for Monday. I'm getting myself ready. I make sure that I go to bed at a decent hour, because I want to be at my very best Monday through Friday. I want to be I want to know things, so I'm reading things that will help me advance in my knowledge base. And so I'm one of those rare individuals that just am so excited Sunday night to go into work Monday. And I don't even view, sometimes I think about it like, I can't believe they're paying me for this. Like, I am just so great. Like, wow, if money were no object, I'd be doing this every day. And I just love what I do. Love my job. Love the people that I interact with. And so if folks are, interested in working and especially in the workforce programs, we really need people. Like, we need folks that, welding instructors, if you're, thinking about that next stage of your career and you want to be a welding instructor, let me know. We'll sign you up. Of course, you have to apply. Yeah. If you're interested in working in advanced manufacturing, we need instructors. Business faculty with our bachelor's degree, we can't hire. We're hiring folks. We obviously want individuals that can, one, be credentialed, that meet the minimum qualifications, but also folks with that service mindset, that they're here to help the student. They want to help them. They want to get better as an instructor, and so a lot of opportunities available.
Awesome. You kind of briefly went over it. I was just gonna say, what does the next 5 years look like for you? And I know you talked about at one point you were on the president, even thinking that was an option, but it seems like you're really wanting to double down on the education side and still teach that. I wouldn't say you're closing it off, but what does your next 5 years look like for you?
Yeah, next 5 years, hopefully I'll be done with this doctoral program, the dissertation. My next 5 years are doing better with improving access to enrollment. So figuring out, in collaboration with my internal partners at the college, what can I do to make things easier for students to enroll? How can I better retain our students? For me, it's not enough just to enroll students, but what can we do to retain our students? Right. And so for me, the next 5 years, I want to spend it brainstorming, collaborating with some amazingly intelligent individuals who I work with, and figuring out what can we do to keep students? What can we do to keep them on track to graduate? And then how can we help them get, life, living wage jobs? What can we do? So I need to get myself out there, work with more industry providers. Aside from that, get better as an instructor. So next 5 year goals, how can I improve my class? I would ultimately like to develop a course that I teach in partnership with my colleagues that meets these instructional design principles, kind of like what you've been exposed to for this Quality Matters. I'd like to update my course to really be just a well-designed course and figure out what can I do to better support my students. So for me, I don't have aspirations at this time to be, from a professional standpoint, to move to a different occupation or anything like that. I'm very satisfied, but it's just to get better in my current role.
You're a true champion of the people. What you're doing now, is it what you thought you'd be doing?
No, I never imagined teaching, whether it's at a college, university. Didn't even think it was a possibility. I thought, I had no idea. I think at one point when I was in 12th grade, things were looking a certain way that, some people said, oh, you should, run for political office. But, politics is very dirty, very ugly, can be ugly. So I didn't, I value happiness professionally and personally. And I did not see a way. Yeah, I did not see that. And so I see a lot of happiness for me personally and professionally in my current role. And so, but no, did not imagine what I'm doing now.
You're well spoken, and I think that quality goes a long way in politics. But there's also other things like where your communication skills can go a long way.
Yep.
Did you have a mentor growing up?
I've had various mentors. I was at one point part of the Big Brothers Big Sisters program where I had a mentor, a big brother, for a year, had to move, had another big brother for another year, had to move, another big brother, had to move after a year. And so I had that, and I'm grateful that my mom applied that for me so I could be a part of that, because, I did not have a father figure at the time, and So you kind of mentioned about hunting earlier, and I grew up without a father figure, but I'm grateful for my mom. I mean, my mom was a very caring, compassionate person. So mentors in school, yes, I had a teacher for a year, teacher here. Didn't really have a teacher through elementary school, middle school, or high school that kind of followed up with me on how I'm doing. I had a mentor at one point in high school who was my debate coach. He very outspoken individual. I would consider him mentor to go to college as well as continue with that, and then mentor while in college my debate coach at Baylor, as well as a couple of other assistant debate coaches that I still consider kind of lifelong friends and supporters.
Okay. What's one thing you wish somebody would have told you when you were younger?
Be patient and enjoy the ride. I wish, and easier said than done, right? So in the moment when you're poor and all you can think about is, your next, when are you going to eat next? Are you going to have to sleep with bugs? Are you going to have a clean, are you going to have a warm place to sleep or a cold, cool enough place to sleep? You're really, it's hard to think about these other things, but, I just think I would have, and maybe I wasn't ready for that advice, that advice at the time. And I kind of think about it now, and I'm like, advice is, we need to let people and younger people talk out, like kind of self-talk, ask them good questions, and let them come to their own conclusions. Because too often, most young people, they're not ready to listen to advice. Yeah. Most young people, and sometimes, as old as I am, I may not be ready for advice. But if we ask the right questions and get things out of them and let folks come to their own conclusions where they hopefully have that self-awareness to think, oh, now I get it. Yeah. Maybe that'll work out better. So I say I wish that I would have had this advice when I was younger, but I would not have been ready to listen to it.
Right. Yeah. Well said. What's your purpose in life?
To be giving of myself, my time, to help those in my community, to help the people in my community, to help my kids be the very best people they can be.
Awesome. Yeah, when you were talking about your dissertation, for me, I believe my purpose in life is to create environments where my team can be successful. And that's my nuclear family. That's my community. That's my work. Those who report directly to me, that's at my church. And for the rec, the Entrepreneur Center we're looking to start, that's our mission. Create environments where our teams can be successful. And so what I heard you saying in your dissertation is create an environment where your students can be successful. It's not they don't have this, that. It's like, no, this student goes through this and he's this afterwards. Or
Absolutely.
This. So I saved that whole thought for this question.
Yeah. And a lot of things go into that environment.
Yeah. It ain't an easy project, and certainly not an easy solution to come onto. Okay. Yeah, you talked about advice you wish you were given, but what was the best advice you were given as a young kid?
Probably just work hard. Work as hard as you can. Try to work harder than the next person. And while there were times where I felt I was the hardest worker, and there were times where I felt like I could have worked harder. But, going into my freshman year at Baylor, first semester, I don't think I worked as hard as I could. After that, tried to work harder. And then there were times where I felt I am way over in my head. Like I am not ready, whether it be reading levels, math levels, whatever it may be. But I just tried to work as hard as I can, and hopefully whatever I could produce, whatever result, it met whatever was a C or higher.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What was your greatest lesson learned in your teens, in your 20s, in your 30s, and now?
Probably greatest lesson is that there's always something you can learn, whether it be a success or a failure. And it's important to enjoy each moment. It's important to enjoy and be appreciative of our failures and to learn from those and just endure. So you've seen the Finding Nemo movie, the phrase "just keep swimming," yeah. And so just keep swimming. And there's turbulent times, but those are there for a reason, to help strengthen our resolve, help us become persistent, and just help us just learn to just grow.
Yeah. I love that question. And when I was I've asked this question probably for the last 20 years to my professors, my teachers, and I've rephrased it over the years. It initially started off to, what was your greatest failure? And that's a little bit direct.
Yeah.
And it's some people aren't willing to share, and I'd always wait to the end of the last day of class where the professor has those little goody feelings in their stomach, like, okay, it's about to be done, and then they're a little bit more willing. It's almost like, to be honest, it's probably the last time I've seen most of my teachers, the last day of class, right? And to walk away with a question like that is what's your greatest failure? Because it's at that point in that last day of class where you've seen them at the highest that you've ever seen them, because they're directly over you.
Yeah.
But it's also where the next day you're almost going to be like their peer, right?
How courageous for you to ask that question. Yeah. Not a lot of people are going to ask that.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's just, for me, it was a lot that I was probably the last thing I'd ever get to learn from them is, and some of those professors were, wow, phenomenal.
Sure.
Great. I mean, and I've got stories about them, and yeah, I'm sure, as you do. What's one thing you want people to know about you?
One thing I want people to know about me. That if they need something, if they need attention, if they need someone to listen, just let me know. I just want people to know that I will be present. I will put down my phone and be present in the moment for them.
Beautiful. What's one thing you want your family, and especially your kids, to know?
That I love them so much that I just want them to be the very best people that they can be, and that includes just reaching whatever potential they can and being kind to others. And I just want the very best, and that I love them.
Okay. This next one is kind of, that was the purpose. Those questions were more purpose driven, and you talked about the whole interviewing the older generations, and really these last two segments, the 6 and 7, are for this group of people who like in this community have passed away, and man, I wish I would have asked those questions, right? Because my daughter would have seen this, or my kids would have seen this. So they are a little bit more deep and maybe gloomy, but whose death has greatly affected you?
My mother, who passed away about a year ago, and she was there for me at the beginning, hard worker and just amazing, most selfless individual, compassionate. She would stop when she finally got a vehicle, and I remember before she had a vehicle, chasing the bus with her, with two other kids, her holding both of them and chasing the bus. Very thankful to VIA and the opportunities for transportation it provides. I remember when we finally got our first car, it was like this beat up old Subaru that the door didn't close. I had to hold it with a rope.
While you were driving?
While she was driving. And one time, this is before, I guess, the seatbelts and all that stuff, but one time she was turning and I almost fell out of the car. She grabbed me because the door wouldn't lock. But she was just so much. She was very compassionate. She stopped. If there was a fight, with in Edgewood District, you see
all
fights
the time,
after
yeah.
school. She would stop, honk the horn. I remember one time there was a fight in front of Memorial High School, and she dropped me off. I think it was like a freshman or sophomore, and she was like in a green Ford Aerostar van, and fight started. She starts honking the horn. I'm like, what the, Mom, why are you honking the horn?
Don't get involved, Mom.
Don't get involved. And so I'm slowly getting out, and she honking the horn, and then even louder. Fight's not stopping. I'm trying to get out of there as fast as I can, and she opens a door. Why, I don't know, but her car was always so messy, and she had all these not used but brand new tampons all over the car, everywhere. Not open, not used.
Yeah.
But she was a short woman. She was 5'1", and I remember she tried to get out of the car, forgot to take off her seatbelt, and she was dangling on one leg outside the vehicle, right leg knocking out tampons on the side of the street. So much so, and so loud with the honking of the horn, that people who were fighting and the people that were watching the fight stopped fighting, turned around to see who is this woman and who is she dropping off. And by this point, I had just gone the long way around, and later that day, people were saying, "Man, did you see that fight?" And I was just listening. "Oh, no, but did you see that lady that stopped? Man, she was like, can you believe she was doing that? She was dropping." And thankfully, they didn't know.
They didn't put the
connection together. But she was just such a giving, compassionate woman, and so it was really difficult to lose her.
Yeah, jeez. I couldn't imagine where I'd be without my mom and losing her that recent.
Call her,
my
hug
condolences,
her
Jesse.
every day.
Yeah. How old was she?
She was 73. Yeah. So we got to take care of ourselves.
Yeah. Family.
Yep.
If you were to die today, you could only call one person. Who's that one person you would call?
I can't call both of my daughters. Get them both on the line.
On the line.
I'd call my oldest Mireya, and I just tell her, and I'd have a video ready. So I need to do a better job of saving these videos, just like, talking on the phone and saving them. But I'd call her.
If your kids or family were the last person, so this opens up to more people.
Yeah.
What would you tell them?
I tell both of my daughters that I love them dearly, and I will always be with them in spirit, supporting them any way I can.
Okay. Do you believe in God?
Absolutely.
What happens when you die?
I believe that we're judged based on what we did, and we will either live in eternity with God in heaven, or if we don't do the things that we're supposed to do, and I believe that we all sin. We all but we all need to we need to ask for forgiveness, and we're judged based on the many amazing things, opportunities that we have an opportunity to do on this world. And so hopefully we're doing what's right, and we, when we do sin, we do ask for forgiveness, and we try to do better. And I think that intent is so important. Are we trying to do better?
Okay. And this one's not on the list, but your faith, has that been something that's always been strong?
No. We tried going to church when I was a little bit younger, and went a couple times, grew up in the Catholic Church, but did not go as frequently. And there were times where the types of priests that we had in the Catholic Church, I remember we've gone through so many Catholic churches. Tried Our Lady of Good Counsel, tried Holy Family, tried, there's a Victory Temple one, there's the Our Lady of Guadalupe, so many different churches that we've got, St. Timothy. And many times we felt, we didn't feel that sense of belonging. That connection wasn't present for whatever reason, whether it was, you're not giving enough money to the church, you're not giving your tithings enough, and you need to give more, or for whatever reason, just did not feel that connection. And so about maybe 8-10 years ago, I was playing basketball, and we were playing. I don't know if I think I told you this story. I was playing basketball with some friends, and their cousin was talking so much trash. I mean, and I was beating it. So back in my younger days, I used to be pretty decent at basketball. I mean, for San Antonio, overweight, out of shape, my age rate, pretty decent. And so I was actually lighting it up from three, having a great game, single-handedly kind of winning the game. And so this guy was talking so much trash, and I'm like, what the heck? And so one of our friends said, hey, let's go to church this Sunday. And I was like, why not? So went to church. And the guy that was the pastor was the guy talking trash that whole time. and he uses this lesson even to this day where he talks about, we have these people that we meet, and he felt ashamed that he never told me, that guy never told me, hey, come to my church, that it was this other guy, a friend of mine, that invited me to the church. So he takes that to encourage folks, hey, please invite folks to the church, and if it's not that church, some church. And so, I've really tried to make it a point to go to religious services much more often and to pray. I downloaded that, there's a prayer like everyday type app, and I try to do that every day with my kids, but I need to be more strict in my discipline of doing that on a daily basis. The prayer, but I do try to at least pray to myself, to God, daily.
That's awesome. Yeah, the story in people's faith journey is always a beautiful one. I'm sure we could do a whole nother podcast on that. I think to your point with the Catholic Church, I grew up Catholic. I am Catholic, and I remember, I'm sure Christian. I know for a fact Christian churches or Protestant churches have been around since way before, but I remember going to. The feeling I had of going to Catholic church was like, I have to go, and then I remember in high school going with friends or somebody to a Protestant or a Christian church, and like, brother, I'm like, whoa, call me brother, right? And it's like just so welcoming. The energy is so warm, and then the music is the worship out of this world, right? And I was like, no wonder.
Sometimes the music's too much, though.
Yeah. The ones I went to for my age group then, right? Christian rock was just starting to become a thing, and I mean, they were, I guess, being Main Street, right? Starting to come around where people would listen to that, and then K-Love was just starting to come out, and everybody's like really or at least I was just becoming aware of K-Love. I'm sure it's probably been around before that, but so welcoming. So the energy was so good, and I think what did it for me on the Catholic side was Acts retreats, and I don't know, and even in more recent years, I feel like those have been a little bit more regulated, or they come down a little bit more structure. They put more structure around them, which is good. I get it, and but I think it's crazy, and some of the stories I hear about some of the stories and what's going on in the school district here at South San, what's going on in the community on the south side. I see the same thing in the communities in our church, from just very similar problems, and under enrollment at the high schools, under enrollment in the church, right? The parishioners are older, right? I mean, I'm the youth of these churches, and I'm like, there's hardly any kids, and it's just interesting. I think Palo Alto is in good shape because they still have a lot of undeveloped land and a lot of people going out that way. So I don't think they'll have much trouble. Same with Texas A&M, San Antonio, but I think South San, some of the schools and the communities here, it's tough.
Yeah.
Are you promoting anything?
Just promoting educational opportunities throughout the Alamo colleges, encouraging folks that if there's a program they're interested in, we probably have that program at Alamo colleges, whether it be continuing education, whether you want to be a truck driver in the CE side, whether you want to go into welding and earn like a level 1 certificate, whether you want to get an associate of applied science in any of our workforce programs, whether you want to get a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity from St. Philip's College, cloud computing at Northwest Vista, the Bachelor's of Operations Management from Palo Alto College, or the Bachelor's of Nursing from San Antonio College. There's just so many amazing opportunities, and because of Alamo Promise, where students in their 12th grade, if they're graduating from any of the schools in Bexar County, they can get it for free, essentially through a last dollar scholarship through Alamo Promise. Why not take advantage of that opportunity? And I would just encourage folks to consider community college, because when I was going to school, it was university, workforce, technical programs, trades, or military, and community college is not a bad way to go.
Right,
I mean,
right.
It's cost great, and honestly, I feel, and this is why I want to send my kids to Alamo colleges. The quality of instructors is exceptional. Not saying anything bad about any university, but I remember normally at a university, think to your freshman level courses. Often the freshman level courses, you're in a giant auditorium,
Weed out.
100-something people. In some cases, some of these universities need to weed out, and they have, I don't know if they have requirements of so many people have to fail or whatnot, but often the instructor for the course are the teaching assistants, the graduate teaching assistants, and the faculty may talk for, a day here or there, 1 day a week kind of thing. But instead of that, at our college, you have some amazing instructors whose primary job is not to research, it's teach.
Mm-hmm.
So our instructors' focus is, how do I get better as an instructor? How do I get better to teach? How do I design my courses better? How do I have good assessments? How do I support my students? Their primary responsibility is shepherding our students along the way, being their guide to be successful, and with the amazing resources where, I think about it, at our college, we have individuals who aspire for leadership positions. They join our Student Government Association. And as part of our Student Government Association, they have opportunities to be a student trustee. They have an opportunity to meet industry leaders. So you're really not losing out on those connections. You have an opportunity to make professional connections and have internships and work opportunities. So I feel like there's so much to be gained as being a student at Alamo colleges. Why not consider that? And we have some exceptional online programs as well, that even if you're traveling, even if you're serving overseas our country, you can still take an online class. And we have some of the most well-designed online classes and online design programs I could ever imagine. And so I'm just promoting that.
Awesome. Where can people follow up with you? On your social media or promotions, or is there a website for these things?
Sure.
And I know there's a website for the business program for sure.
Yes. So if you type in Palo Alto College Career Technical Education Programs on a Google search, you're going to see all of our different workforce programs, or you can just type in alamo.edu and see the many offerings available at Alamo colleges. If you do want to follow me socially, I'm on LinkedIn, and I usually have pretty decent updates with what's happening on my LinkedIn. If you just search for Joseph Coppola, Ed Advocate, Educational Advocate on my LinkedIn, you'll probably find me. So yeah.
Joseph Coppola, the Department Chair of IT, Cybersecurity, Business, and you name it, he's got his hands in somewhere in there. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.